All right. Hello, everyone. If you're first time here, hopefully you've been doing the course already. If not, I highly suggest you go check it out. For those of you, if you're coming back, hopefully you finished Unit 4 or either started Unit 5 or you're there. So let's get started. Who am I? I am Susan Hoyt. I live here in Houston, Texas, where it's 80 degrees in December, but I'm a computer science educator for about 25, going on 26 years. I have been with Saylor for a little over a year now. I do love teaching coding. It opens up so much to so many people who may have never had a chance to be exposed to it. And I love seeing people who I've taught and stuff coming back and working at Microsoft and doing all these cool things. So I do love to hang out with my dogs, love reading books, and I do like the warm weather by a sand and beach area, though, not in Houston. All right. This is the first in a series of 3 courses that will cover JavaScript. There's going to be 6 units in this first course, and we are now on Unit 5. So we are on the basics of functions. From last week, we covered Unit 4. We talked about the certification. I talk about this every time. How do you get your free certificate? Well, you work through all the course, and then you get to that final assessment. You have to get a 70 or above on that assessment in order to receive your certificate. You can retake the exam as many times as you want, but you have to get a week between before you can try again. So you can keep trying and keep trying. And hopefully, as you go through this and you do the end of the unit assessments, that should help you prepare for this exam. We also have been discussing using Code Runner because that is how a lot of the assessment and exam questions are in this in the units here. So I will show that again today also. We did use a linter last week, JS hint, to find some of our syntax errors. So that was something different that we did. Sorry, I got the mouse that likes to go crazy when I touch it. Okay, so what other topics did we actually cover? We talked about conditional statements, if else, switch case, while, do while, for loops, relational, Boolean operators, and we looked at some code that did interactive choices based on our conditions. What are we going to do this unit? Well, first of all, this unit isn't a huge unit, but it should take you approximately 2 hours to complete. When you successfully complete this, you should be able to identify types of functions, use functions with arguments, compare type of function declarations, and write code that will call a function. So, me and my mouse. So we'll start with a video that introduces you to functions. That's what 5.1 begins with immediately. Basically, what is a function? It's a set of code that will help eliminate the need to write the same code repeatedly. So if you have something that you're going to keep using over and over again, maybe not repetitively, but you just need it maybe at step 1, and then you need to do some other things, and then at step 25, you need to use that same thing again, you would use a function. And a function can kind of modularize your code. So it's easier to modify, easier to read. I can see what you're doing, and you don't have to just keep copying and pasting that same code to where you end up with 2,000 lines of code when maybe it could be 500. Using functions has 2 steps, and you have to have both steps or they won't work. First, you have to define your function. You have to put your set of actions together, give it a meaningful name, and then the second step is call the function. So once you define it, that sets it there and gets it ready to go. But if you don't call it, it will never happen. So in the video where they talk about functions, I just grabbed a screenshot right here from it. And basically they say, I have a function. His name is my function. And I put these parentheses. The parentheses are really important in functions because that lets us know they are a function. Then I have a curly brace to start and a curly brace to end. This is defining my function. This below it is calling my function. So this is a call to that function. Do you have to have them in order like this? No, you don't. You could write all your functions at some point, have them all at the top if you wanted. Then way down at the bottom is where you could have all your calls to them and set up your code however you like it, and or however someone says that they need you to do it in your office or whatever. So again, you declare it with this keyword function. So there's our keyword function. Then you say your name, and this is my function is what I called it. So that is my meaningful name for it. Then you put all your commands that you want them to do inside here. This looks almost like a Scratch kind of program where we're doing dragging and dropping and stuff. And it's a very good video. I highly suggest you watch it. It has like some famous people who code and some people who from Microsoft. It's a good video. Okay, so then after we create it again, we call it by saying its name. So I say the function name, and then I put parentheses again. I can't forget the parentheses because I forget the parentheses, it's going to have some problems. If you don't ever call the function, it won't execute. So I have tons of examples to show you, so bear with me. All right, so this one looks a little different. This is one way that we can define a function. We can define it as a constant. C-O-N-S-T, so that means what constant does is it means, hey, you can never change this. So that means if somewhere along the way I was writing and I thought I forgot to write my function called square and I tried to write it again for whatever reason, it would tell me, square's already been defined, you can't redefine it. So this is a way to just make sure that it could never be changed as to what it does, and it's just another way that we can define functions in JavaScript. So in this case, we use the word const, which is a keyword. In this case, we named our function just nothing. Do you see it just says function X? Now this is not our function name. This is square, and square is equal to our function. So our function doesn't actually have a name like we just saw here. We said function, my function. This function's value is set to be square. So square will get whatever function returns. So if you notice, this is our declarations. This is where we've declared everything. Then as we come down here, console.log, so we're going to print something out. We say the name square and we pass it 12. Now when we pass it 12, it comes up here and square 12 goes there. And so now when 12 comes in here, it's going to return 12 times 12, which is 144. So this function does have a parameter. So you notice here, we've got something in between those parentheses, and over here we did not. So we're going to see a whole bunch of different examples that have parameters. They may have more than one, they may have none. So whenever you do have a parameter, we must send it a value. There are some examples I'll show you where you may have accidentally sent too many, you may have forgotten to send it, and I'll show you what happens when you do that. All right, let me see where I am at. Okay, so what I wanted to show you, whoops, let me go back, let me grab this. And notice I am in Replit again. So I'm in Replit, and while I'm in it, I'm going to already be logged in. So I'm going to create something. Whoop. And when I create something, I like to use Node.js when I'm doing this. Again, it shows some weird name here, and I don't care at this point. If you're going to try to organize all these examples, I definitely suggest that you go ahead and give it some names. That way you know where they are, and you could go back and look at them. All right. Oh, I did that again. I did it in the wrong spot. Hold on. All right, so right here is what we had just looked at. So I'm going to grab this one real fast, and I'm going to bring it over here. All right, so this is what we had. And so if I run this, it says 144 because I printed out the result of square and I sent square 12. So if I sent it something else like 10, then the value changes right here. Now, if I didn't do this, let's say I forgot to call it. I wrote it all and everything like that, but I forgot to call it. So now if I run it, nothing happens. So I've made it and I have it, but if I don't call it, that means it never gets executed. So let's go back over here now. And now what I really want to show you is something that I did not show you in Unit 3 because we were pressed for time. And so I want to show you the interactive references that we have in this course. If we go back to Unit 3, there's 2 places that you can run examples and use as a reference. If you forgot the syntax, you want another example, I just confused you by showing you something and you're like, okay, I'm going to have to go recheck that out. Then you choose a topic, it'll say the definition, you hit the next page and you'll choose try it. So let's do one of these right now. Let's go to 3.4 and I'm going to show you where to go. So if I come here, I go to 3 and I'm in the course right here. So if I go to 3 and I go down here to 3.4, and I'm going to do that one first, 3.4, and I see what is a statement. That's not what I want. See right here, I see JavaScript reserved keywords. So if I grab that, notice it shows me a whole bunch of reserved keywords. So it's got a whole bunch of stuff, and you notice when I mouse over them, they all look like they have a link, and they do. So let's go to function. Again, let's say I'm doing this, I forgot how to use a function, I forgot how to use a break or anything like that. I come here and I go, okay, I need to look at a function again. So I click on it. When I click on function, it gives me its definition. The function keyword can be used to define a function. Great. So I go next page. And it says try it. Click here to try an example. And again, we're going to use Code Runner. So if I click here, it opens up and I did one already. So I'm going to go continue my attempt. And give it just a second to load. All right, so then it kind of tells me a little bit more about function. It tells me that parameters are optional. And it gives me a whole bunch of other little definitions and stuff. And then it says, hey, here's an example for you. And it says in the following example, this anonymous function, so this is like the one we did that's anonymous. It doesn't have a name here, but it's associated with this constant, get rectangle area. It calculates the area of a rectangle using 2 parameters. See how there's 2 things in here now, a width and a height. So it says select your check button to try the example. So I go check. It tells me what my expected output is, which is 12. And notice it says my input was 3 and 4. That's what I sent it. Then it says that it's expected to return 12, and it did return 12. Now let's say you want to play around with this. Well, things you could do is you could grab this and you can go throw it into Replit, and you can change the values and change stuff around. You can even change it here. It'll just tell you at the bottom here, it'll just say, hey, that's not the value I expected because it's still expecting 12. But if you could change it, you could decide to send it 4 and 4, and then you do check. And so now it says, okay, that's the input. You did, no, that's not the input. It says, okay, that's not it. But it tells you this is what my output would be. So it'll look a little weird if you don't have something you want to copy and paste it into, but you can still mess around with it inside here. And then you can always go reset answer. And it'll reset it. So let's go back. And so this was again in Unit 3, and it was 3.4, Intro to JavaScript statements. And it was underneath reserved words. Now there's also a second place where you can have this. So this is 3.4 reserved keywords. There's also one up here in 3.3, operators. So if I go to expressions and operators, reference on this one, then the interesting thing about this is that it says it's going to document all this stuff. So I've decided, I don't remember how the Boolean and works. I've forgotten, are they both true? Are they both false? I forgot. So look at all these words I can go through. I can go through all this. Okay, well, I don't see what I want there. So now I'm going to come over here. I've got these operators I could check into. And that's not what I'm looking for, so I keep going. Okay, here's some more. Still don't see what I'm looking for. I keep going. Okay, here's some plus, minus. Okay, that's not what I want though. Let me keep going. Now here I've got my addition, subtraction, all this. Here's my modulus, the remainder. I might forget about that and may want to check it. My exponent. Still going because I want that and. Okay, we've got our less than, our greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. I have my equality. We have the equality of equal, equal, not equal, our triple equal, and our not, and then two equals. I'm still going. We have bitwise stuff, which we haven't talked about, but maybe you're doing something that you want to come back here and look at that. Okay, now this is where I have to be careful. This has bitwise and. This is not the one we want to look for if we're looking for a Boolean one. Okay, so we want to keep going. Ah, there it is. There's my logical and. See how it has the 2 ampersands? So if I click on it, again, it's going to open up and it tells me a little bit about it. And it tells me it'll be true if and only if all the operands are true. Otherwise, it's false. Maybe that's all I needed to know. If not, I go next page because I decided I want to play around with this. And I go click here. Once I go click here, I'm going to continue my attempt because I tried it before. And now I have right here an example. And again, I can check it. Now this one, it says expected false got true. So let's reset my answer because I was playing around with it. All right, now let's check it again. Okay, now we're good. Whatever changes I made, I fixed. So I expected false and I got false. A greater than 0. That is true. B greater than 0. That is false because -2 is not greater than 0. So if I wanted to play around with it and make it true, I could make both of those statements true, which is what I was playing around with earlier. And now I check it again. I got what I wanted to get, but it's still going to tell me I was wrong, but that's okay. If you don't like to mess around with this because it's telling you that it's not the output it expected, you can always copy paste this and throw it into Replit. All right. That's what I just wanted to touch on because this is a really good reference for you to go to on anything you might not remember or you might just want to learn more about. Okay, back onto functions. All right, so this example right here, which let me grab this and then I'll make it big again. All right. So this example shows functions that return values and ones that do not. And it also shows functions with no parameters and one with 2 parameters. So I'm going to grab this example and I'm going to throw it back into Replit and we're going to look at it together. And it is right here. So let me grab it. All right. So right now I see that I made a constant make noise. It's an anonymous function. And all it does is print out plain. So notice there's no return here. There's also nothing inside the parentheses. So that means it doesn't have any parameters. So that means when I want to call this function or make this function execute, I say the name, parentheses, but this one has nothing I need to send it. So I just have the parentheses like that. So if I run it, it's just going to output plain. And we're going to run it in a minute. Have my second one down here that's called power. It is a function that's going to take in 2 things, a base and an exponent. So I have result is 1. I even have a loop here. And going through this, I'm going to return the power. So here I send it power by saying power. That's the name of it. And I send it 2 parameters. 2, which goes and matches up with base, and 10, which matches up with exponent. It executes this, and then it will return. See how this one has a return? It will return the result where it came from. So notice on this one, I'm just saying the name and having it go there because it actually prints it out itself. In this one, I'm saying to print out, and then I'm actually calling it because it returns something. So whatever it returns goes back to where I called it from. So when it returns the result, it goes right back here and then it prints it. So let me run this real fast. So pling comes from us saying make noise. And then This down here comes from us calling power. Now watch this. If I don't call my method, or my function, sorry, notice it didn't happen. It only did the 1024 down here. So if I don't call a method, even though I wrote it, it will not execute. Now, I don't have to have it right next to it. What if I decided I wanted to do it after this one? And I decided I wanted to say the name of the function, parentheses. Now, I wrote this one. Great, that doesn't mean anything. That has nothing to do with the order. And I wrote this one. Still doesn't have to do with the order. The order is where these statements are. So the first thing it's going to do is my console.log power 2, 10. Then it's going to do make noise. So watch. So we've got the 1024 now first because it did this line. And then after that, it came down here and it did the plink because it called make noise, which did plink. All right. Let's continue on. All right, so when we're looking at this, you hear bindings and scope and you hear stuff like that. So I'm going to try to touch on it briefly, and then it goes into it in some more detail in some of the text in there. And it's very important to understand what's the difference between a local and a global scope. So this is kind of a quick introduction to it. So if you notice over here, I said let x is 10. And inside here, I also use var. So when I declare something as let or constant, that makes them local to the block they're declared in. So what does that mean? Well, this let is going to be known through here. This let would only be known from that curly brace to that one. Constants like this one will be known throughout the whole block that they're in. So if they're inside curly braces, that's where they're going to be known. If they're not inside curly braces, they're going to be known inside that file. If you use var, those are visible everywhere. So even though I put var z in here, var z is known everywhere. It's not just known from this curly brace to this one. But if you notice y here, I don't have another y anywhere outside of those curly braces that I defined. So y is only known from this curly brace to this one. So I'm going to show you a couple examples here in a minute. I'm going to grab both of these. And if I try to reference y outside of here, it's going to give me an error because since I use let, that makes it local. Okay. When I use var, it's available to everyone. So sometimes you can get into trouble using var because you can accidentally change something way down the way and not realize that you changed it. We will also look at this one and kind of see how this in works in here. Because notice I have an in here that would be known through this block. And then this in that is my parameter is only going to be known inside here. So they're two different ins, even though they have the same variable name. All right, so let's go to that. Let me grab you. And put this in here. All right, so let's do this one first and talk about that y and how it gets weird. Okay, so you notice here I said let x equals 10. So since I used a let, it's not global, but it will be known from here all the way down to there. Now inside this if, I have this curly brace and that one. So that means when I declare things inside here with a let, they're only known from here to there. Now I did a var z in here. When I do var, it's global. What does that mean? It means no matter where you stick it, everybody can use it. So z is 30 here. I could take z outside of here and change it if I wanted to. So let's play around with this for a second. So I'm going to run it first, and we're going to talk about what the output is. So this says let x is 10. If true means it's always going to happen. So x is 10, then I let y be 20, and I have z as a var set equal to 30. So if I add those three together, I get 60. So when I come down here and I print x plus z. So x is now 10 and Z is what? 30, because I haven't changed anyone. So this right here is where that 40 comes from. Okay, now what if I said, oh, I wanted to do X plus Y? So then I decide to do X plus Y. And notice it tells me that Y is not defined. And Y is not defined because I said let Y inside here. So when I put it inside there, again, I can only use Y from there to there. So I said my Z is 30 inside here. Now, as I'm out here, you noticed I could use that Z. Now, what if I accidentally decided to change Z out here? And then I'm going to do C again. And let's see if I changed its value outside of that if. Oh, sorry, I forgot to take off the Y. Fix that. So it was still my 60 and 40 from the original thing. Right here, I changed Z to 50. Even though I did Z between here, because I said var, I can use it outside here and I can change it. And that's why var can sometimes get you in trouble, because you accidentally changed something you didn't mean to change because you forgot about it. So always be careful, and you should try to avoid using var because of that. Now, if we wanted to do something else, let's look at what if I did this. Let's do 100 to make it an easy number. I've got a let X is 10 here and a let X is 100 there. So let's see what happens when I run this. All right, so I came in here, X was 10. Then I came in here and said, no, X is 100. And when I said that, it said to do Y is 20, Z is 30. So all those together, added together, are now 150. Makes sense? So now down here, I try to add X plus Z. X plus Z is 40. And why is that? Because I declared another X inside here who's only known from here to there. So when I am inside here, my X is 100. When I'm outside here, guess what X is? 10. Okay. All right. Let me grab that other example. Whoop, not that one. Hold on. Hold on, I forgot which example I was going to show as the other one. It's the have one. Okay, so let me grab this again because I think I closed it. Oh, it was right there. I didn't close it. Just kidding. Okay, let's grab this one now and do kind of the same thing really fast. Okay, so now we have constant have as function. It's got one parameter. It's going to return that parameter divided by 2. So down here, I said to let n equals 10. So that means when I call have and I call it with 100, then it should do 50. Let's see what happens. All right, so what happened here? So n was 10 and it came up here. Whenever I did this, it came up here, but it didn't come up here as that 10. I sent what to it? 100. So when I send 100, it, like when I did this 10, it doesn't just mean n up here is 10. When I call the function, it takes 100, passes it to 10. Now n is 100. 100 divided by 2 is 50. So it returns 50 back where it called it from. So it returns 50 right here. So that is where the 50 came from. Then I say, okay, now print out n. Well, n is still 10 because I didn't change n. All I did was use 10 as a use n as a parameter here. So let's try something inside here real fast, because I told you this n is different than that n. So let's see if you believe it. Okay. So let's do inside here. You really wouldn't do this, but I just want to show you. So I send it 100. Great. I send it 100. And then right after that, I go, change it to 500. I don't want it to be 100. So it should actually return 250. So let's see if that happens. Okay, it did. But right here, do you see I said n is 500? What did it print out for n? 10. Because this n right here is different than that n. This n only has scope right here inside this function. So if I change n here, it's not going to affect it outside here. So my n still stayed as 10. All right, let's keep going. All right, the call stack. That's what that's what the computer uses to make sure it knows where it is, especially when it has a lot of function calls. It's got to keep track of it. So if you look at this example, this is called function greet. It has one parameter called who, and inside it, it just prints something out. So you notice it's not a return method or return function. I'm sorry, I teach Java too. So it's a return, it's not a return function because it doesn't have a return here. So all it does is console.log hello, and then it prints out the name of whoever you sent it. So in order to call this function, I say the function name greet, I send it a name. So in this case, I sent it Harry. So Harry goes up here, and when Harry gets there, it comes inside the method or the function and it prints it. It prints hello, Harry. Then when it finishes, it gets right here. It goes back to the next statement after where it was. So that means it goes now down to here. So let's talk about this over here. So it's not in the function. As I come through here, we aren't into the function. We're right in front of the G. So now it says call greet and send Harry. So now we're going to go into greet. So we come up here and we go into greet. After we get into greet, we start. Now we're into console.log. We go ahead and do what that says. And now we're still in greet. But now we're going to finish and we're no longer in the function. So we go back. This is where I had finished. Now I go over here and now I'm in console.log and I'm not in the function anymore. All I'm going to do is print 5. Every time a function is called, the current context is stored on the stack. When a function returns or completes, it removes the top context from the stack. Think a stack of plates. Whatever you put on top is the first thing that comes out. You have to be careful with recursive function calls so you don't run out of stack space. So let's do this one real fast now. Recursion is when a function calls itself. And in this case, we have two functions that keep calling each other. And they don't have any way to stop. So we will end up with an issue, and I will talk about that when I get it over here. All right, so I have a function called chicken, no parameters. It returns and calls egg. So that means it goes to egg then. Egg has no parameters, and it returns, now wait, it calls chicken. So now it goes to chicken, who then goes to egg, who then goes to chicken. So this is a recursive call between two functions. If we did not have this statement right here, it wouldn't be an issue because it would never execute. So if I didn't have a call to one of them, it wouldn't be an issue. Nothing happens. So if I go ahead and call chicken, then let's see what happens. Notice it's referencing a stack. It says that the maximum call stack size exceeded. So I am in an infinite recursion right here. Now, do you think it would have changed if I would have called egg first? Absolutely not. It's not going to change because egg calls chicken and does the same exact thing. So whenever you have functions calling each other, you have to be careful. Another way that you could have issues is if the function, if you accidentally had a function call itself. So if a function keeps calling itself, then that's going to be another place where you're going to get stuck in infinite recursion. All right. Okay, what about the number of parameters matching up with your function call? So if you pass too many, and this is where JavaScript is very unique in this, if you pass too many, it ignores them. If you pass too few, the missing one get assigned the value undefined. So that's a con because you can pass the wrong amount and not be notified. And so you could be making a mistake and you can't figure out where it's happening just because you accidentally sent too many or not enough. The pro of it is that you can call a function with different numbers of parameters. So let's look at an example of this. Yeah. All right, so let's grab this guy real fast. All right, so I have this function called square. Square has one parameter, and here's its beginning and here its end. I know this is kind of a weird way to write the function because it's all one line, but does that happen? Yeah, it does. Can we make it look better? Sure, we could do this. And then we could put this on another line and make it look a lot better. Now, I'm going to, since it's a return method or return function, I am going to want to print it out. So I said console.log. Now I'm going to call square. Now I just told you that square takes in one parameter. How many did I give them? 3. I gave it a 4, I gave it a true, and I gave it a hedgehog. I just said, I don't even care, just call it with whatever. Now, with some other languages, you're going to have it screaming at you. But in JavaScript, they're like, okay, well, I guess you meant the 4. So we'll go ahead and take the 4 and return 16 to you. Now, what if I made them all numbers? How would it pick? How does it pick which number that it decides to keep? Well, let's see. So it still kept the 4. Okay, what if I did something like this? And this. Let's do 4 like this also. No, you know what? Let's keep it. Let's do that. All right, let's see what happens with this. I suggest anytime you're learning new stuff that you just sit here and you play around with it and you say, okay, what happens if I did that? What happens if I do this? Now, it did its weird conversion here. It took that 4 as a string and it said, oh, you need that to be a number. Let me fix that for you. Now, what if I would have had it as this? Now, it couldn't figure out that I could have used that 7 maybe. It just said it's not a number. So it made it undefined because it was thrown off. So you can see we're sending too many, or let's not send enough. Let's not send one at all. Since JavaScript just kind of fixes it for you, sometimes you can run into problems. So I didn't send anything. So that means it said X was undefined. Well, undefined times undefined is not a number. So that's where that came from. Let's move on. All right, so I got a couple more examples I want to show you. This one is going to show you what happens if, let's just grab it before I just sit here and explain it. Let's get rid of all these. All right. Oops, I definitely grabbed the wrong one with that one. All right, let's go back. And I bet it's on the previous page. Sorry about that. Too many copy and paste for me. All right, so let's do this -1. All right, so let's look at it. Function minus. So our function's name is minus. It takes in 2 parameters, A and B. Now I have an if here, and this if says if B is undefined, which means I only send it one parameter like this one, then it says just return the negative of that number. Otherwise, return A minus B. So this has an if here to go ahead and catch it if I don't send it. That way I can just have one minus function that can work as a unary operator also. So if I run this, 10 came in. 10 came in as A because I matched those up. Because it's a return function, remember, I'm going to try to print it out. So it's going to return back to where I called it. So 10 comes in here. B is definitely undefined.
Hold on, I'm coming back here. Sorry, I'm getting some message in the chat that you potentially
Okay.
can't be heard. So hold on just one second.
Okay.
I'm sorry in the chat. I'm checking right now. I can hear it on my YouTube end, so maybe try refreshing your page. But I can hear it on another one. So hopefully that fixes. But I think we have it. If anyone else is having trouble, please let me know. But we can continue. Sorry about that, Susan.
Okay, all right. So we caught that B was undefined because we sent 10. We just sent it 1, so A got 10. B did not get anything, so it was undefined. So I return the opposite of A, which means I'm going to return -10 to right here. Once I return from a function, I don't come back. So when you see this return, I'm out of there. So then I also can send it to, so I can send it 10 and 5. A is 10, B is 5. And so B is not undefined because it has a value 5. And so I will return 10 minus 5, and I'll return that result right back to where I called it. So 5 will come back here and I will print it. All right, so let's look at that other one, which is here. This shows another unique way that you can do functions in JavaScript is you can actually set a default for one of your parameters. So in this case, this function is called power. Oops, and I did not. Okay. So this power is, whoops, let's run it. And it does not have function power. Let's do that. Function power. And let's make sure everything else looks okay. Let's go and run that. All right. So my function power has base. And if I don't get an exponent, I'm going to go ahead and default to 2. So this is another way that you can have a way to catch it in case you only send 1. So if I send you 4 and I don't send you that second parameter, it's going to default to 2. So this goes ahead and calculates the exponent. So 4 to the second would be 16. If I do send a power, then it's no longer 2. Then exponent becomes the second parameter, which in this case is 6. And so it becomes 64. So this is just another way that you can catch errors and hopefully avoid them by doing something like that. All right. All right, so, whoops, go here. And these are the 2 we just talked about. So those were the 2 examples we discussed. Let's go on one more. So we're going to talk about declaring functions. These are going to be some of the type of functions that you will see and that you have seen. So we did our constant one first. With our function, we don't put a name here. This is f that's going to hold our function's value. We can have parameters, we cannot have parameters, we can have more than one, whatever we want to do. In this case, this function is not a return function because it doesn't have the word return. It is simply going to print something out for us. Now, the second one is that I am having a function, g. It has 2 parameters, and it is a return. So it is going to return this value to wherever I called it from. This one is the tricky kind of function, which I'll show you the steps to do. Now, you may see this in some code that you look at online. I always joke with my students that a lot of times I think coding people like to make their stuff look as weird as possible so that people can't steal their code. I don't know. I don't have an excuse for that, but we will talk about this for a second. It's not really that great to use just because it's really hard. Like, I can't look at this really fast, especially if I wasn't a JavaScript person and know exactly what it was doing. So let's move on. Oh. Okay, so when I declare functions, function declarations in JavaScript are hoisted to the top of the enclosing function or the global scope. So you can use the function before you declare it. So the difference between these 2 is that when I write a function, I don't have to have it declared before I use it. Now, when I use it as a var or as a constant or something like that, then I can't use it or call it until it has been declared. So this would have to be under here. So let me show you that really fast. And that just all depends on how you're setting up your code, how you want to have your program function. So let's get that here. Let's do this one. Well, not that one. Let's do this one. I think it's less confusing. All right. So I have a function called hoisted. It has no parameters, and it is going to simply print out the word foo. So I have it declared here, and I have determined what it is. Usually I declare a variable, then I can use it. In this case, it says that I don't have to declare it first, that it has global scope, and so I can say it wherever I want. So let's look at that. It worked fine. Now, a lot of times you may see coding where they put all their function calls and all their stuff here, and then at the very bottom of their code, they'll have actual function declarations. Because you may not need to know information hiding. You may not need to know at all what this does. You just may need to be able to use it. So you may not want it up here at the top of your code. You may want it all at the bottom. That way you don't have to worry about it. But if you decided that you wanted to actually make it a constant or a var or something like that, then you can't make your code look like that because it won't work. So now I didn't name it a function. I said it's a var. We did the constants a minute ago too. So if I run it, it told me, I don't know what you're talking about, because right here, I tried to call not hoisted, and it said, there's nothing above me called that. So I don't know what you're talking about. So when you are using a function this way, you have to keep it in mind that you must declare it first. Now watch, let's move it down here and let's see if it works. From what I'm saying, it should. So comment that out. And it works fine. So when you don't do it with the keyword function in the other way that we just showed you, then you have to have it declared before you call it. Okay. All right. And this is what we just did. So this is, besides the var one, this is the one that we did earlier. And again, this one would also have to be declared before I could call it. Otherwise, I will get an error saying, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so now we're going to talk about this arrow function thing, which I told you looks weird. So it is a compact alternative to traditional function expressions. It's limited and it can't be used in all situations. So let's look at this. Let's say I had a function A that just returned A plus 100. So I had this one to start with. Let's break it down to what the arrow function would do. Step one, I remove the word function. So I took out the word function and now I just have my A. Now I place my arrow between the argument and the opening body bracket. So notice my arrow, and you have to be aware of this arrow. It isn't greater than or equal to. It's equal greater. It actually looks like an arrow. And so I've still got my curly braces. The only thing I've done right now is I took off the word function and I put this arrow in between those two. Then I remove the body braces. Now I'm going to get rid of my curly braces. And then I'm going to leave the word return. Okay. But then I said, no, I don't even need that. So I take it out. So now I've gotten rid of 1, 2, 3 more things. So now I just have this. So now I don't even need the parentheses around it. I just have the letter A, which implies A plus 100. And this is actually an arrow function. So if you saw this as you're going through someone's code, you might quickly go, oh, A is a variable, and I just added 100 to it. And you may not realize, oh, wait, that was a function. So if you see this weird arrow right here, remember that is actually a function, and it's a function that looks like this that's been brought down to something like that. Do I use that much? No, I don't. But I do know that when you go online and you start to look at some code and you start to look at examples, you may run into this. So it's always good to know that you might see that. All right, then we get into this example in action. So it has a nice video and it has some stuff to have you write your name, and it talks about a couple of these different functions. So I'm going to grab that. Hold on, I put it over here somewhere. Let me grab this code and we're going to play around with this for a second. And again, I want to remind you that any example in action, you should go ahead, work through it, get your stuff, and work exactly the same thing they do, because there's nothing better learning than working along with them. All right, so here I am. I have my function, not as a function declaration, but as this bar. So that means I can't use it until I have written it. So it's written here. So now I can use it under here. All right, so let's look at this. I have called write my name 3 times. So in this case, I think it should write Thomas 3 times. It does, great. So now I have write a name, which is a function. And now look what it takes, a parameter called name. And so I ran it. Why didn't it work? Why didn't it work? If I keep running it, still doesn't work. Why is that? Well, because I haven't called it. So I have to call it by saying the function's name, write a name. That's my function name. Parentheses. Does it have something inside it that it needs? Yes, it does. So I'm just going to send it a name, and then let's see if it works. It did, because I sent it that now. Now, what if after that I decided I wanted to do the other one again? Now I don't have to put anything in there because write my name does not have any parameters. So I had it do that one again, and now it wrote it. So as you're working through and going through this example in action with him, he goes through a whole bunch of nice steps. We're talking about, what if I do this? What if I do that? And I highly suggest that you work through those with him because it's a great example. All right. So practice review. Then the practice review is great because all these are preparing you for that end of unit and end of course test. So this practice review is using functions with conditionals. It'll calculate the speed. So let me get it because I have the code right here. Hopefully I didn't mess up the code when I copied it. And again, if you mess up the code when you copy it, you just go right back and copy it again because it'll all copy. Okay. I'm going to run it real fast. Holy cow, what happened? Well, I was in what here? I was not in an HTML type thing, was I? And this is definitely HTML. So guess what I need to do? I'm going to have to make a new replit, which I think I go here. Yeah. So I'm going to go create. That was definitely not Node.js stuff. It's what? HTML, CSS, JS. So now I need to go to that one. All right, let's try that again. Hold on, give it a second. This definitely looks better. This looks like more of the stuff I needed because I needed some HTML stuff. So always be careful when we're going between things like that to make sure you're in the right type of editor. So if I run this, all right, I think I got the wrong one. Hold on. Let's make sure I grab the right one. And I did not, so hold on. All right, let's try again. All right, so let's run it and see what happens first. Oh, it asked me to do something. It says enter the distance or -1 to end. All right, so I'm going to do 100 for distance because let's pretend I have no idea what I'm doing. And let's say for me to go 100 miles, it took me, I don't know, 60 minutes. So then this gives me some kind of answer and I'm going to say, okay, and I'm going to try to look at it. Well, it keeps asking me for this. So I'm going to hit, because it tells me right here to hit -1 to end. So I'm going to hit -1 and end it so we can look at the code together. All right. So notice we have a function. Notice we're in the script part here, right? And we have a function called speed, and it takes in two parameters, distance and time. It will return your distance divided by your time. So what did we do down here? We said to let D be the prompt of enter the distance and -1 to end. If you weren't here last week, we talked about while loops that had some kind of sentinel number that would make them stop. So in this case, -1 is our sentinel. And we'll say while D is not equal to that -1, then we'll go ahead and let them enter whatever they need to do. Now notice I have to ask here for them to enter a -1 to end, and I have to ask it again inside here. I have to give them a chance to enter something for that loop control variable before I start it. And when I'm in the loop, I have to be able to change that loop control variable. Otherwise, I get stuck in an infinite loop. So if I run it again, let's look at it. So it says enter the distance. Okay, let's do 287. And then let's say it took me 90 minutes. Okay, so then it gives me my result. It prints it out. And now it says, hey, do you want to do this again? And so if I say yes, I do another one. If I want to stop, I do -1, and I use that sentinel number to go ahead and get rid of it. All right. Now we're into the Unit 5 assessment. So as you get into the Unit 5 assessment, let's go over here and let me close some of these and let's get to it. All right, so I'm in Unit 5. Let's go to it again. So we've gone through all of this stuff. Don't forget, example and actions and practice reviews are very important to help you get ready for these assessments. So let's go look at the assessment. In this assessment, I'm going to go ahead and say continue my attempt. And I'm going to go over to 1. Actually, I should have done a new preview. Let's just do that. Okay, so if you notice here, we've got a matching fill in the blankish, come down, multiple choice, true or false. We've got all kinds of different types of questions. So that's 1 through 8. Then we go next page and we get to 9. 9 says that we are going to test a function using a default value. So as a developer, you'll test your functions using different inputs. So write a function called borrow that has 2 parameters, and it will return the amount times rate. The function should use a default value. So remember that default value we used in equal. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say I need a function, and its name is borrow, and I'm going to send it 2 of those. And I know that I'm going to put my curly braces, and I'm going to return amount times rate. Okay, so I said all that because they just told me all that, right? Now, your job, because I'm not going to give you the answer on this, I want you to definitely know, is that you should now find a default value and be able to set our rate to a default value of 3.0. So that means you're going to add something here, and after you're done adding something there, you will check it. And now, I don't know what happened because I haven't finished the test yet. So I'm not sure, was I right or wrong? Because it didn't tell me to print anything out, did it? No, I have no idea. So I'm going to wait, and I'm just going to say, maybe I'm right. And I'm going to move to the next page. Could I do console.log and check it? Sure, I could do that too. Now we're on this one. We're going to write code to call the can_play internal JavaScript function to see if a user registered to play a game. First of all, always read all the stuff. You have no CSS and no JS code. So that means you're only going to be working right here in this window in code run. So you're only going to be working in here. So that means I'm going to make it big so I can put stuff in there. Write your code after the comments. Now, remember, I told you to watch out right here. It's hard to see these lets and these functions sometimes. That light blue is really light. So always check, make sure it's there if you're writing stuff. Then it tells us assign true to registered and call the function. So I'm going to do one little step with you. So I'm going to assign true to registered. I do not have to say let again because I already said let registered. So I'm just going to take registered and I'm going to assign it to true. Okay. The next step it tells me to do is call the function. Okay. What is the function name? Well, come down here. Notice it says don't put any code in this area. So don't put anything in here because if you do, you're going to mess it up and it's going to say you were wrong. So in here, I would say the name of the method or the function. So sorry, I keep saying method. The name of it, and what do I need to send it? I need to send it registered. Okay. Then it tells me to go ahead and do the false here. And then when I'm done, I can see immediately that it printed out a yes. So that's a good thing. Okay. I could check it right now. And it tells me, hey, something's not right with your stuff. So I could check that. And then I could be like, oh, let me fix that then before I go on. And I could finish, which you can tell I didn't finish it. I didn't do this part. So then once I finish all that and I say, okay, well, I'm done. I'm going to finish it. So then once I finish, I submit it all. Then I go through, and when I do miss stuff, if you notice, it tells me, hey, this is what you're doing. This is how things need to be. And it'll even give me some help here and tell me what it should look like. So you can always use that to help and then reset it. I highly suggest that you try to not just sit there and copy that code because you might see this stuff in your final assessment so you can get that certificate. All right. We have gone through a lot of stuff today. So next week, we have a ton of stuff to go over too, because next week's episode has almost 4 hours of stuff in it. So in next week, we'll be talking about the DOM, objects, and some best practices for JavaScript. So you'll identify some properties of objects. You'll explain the tree of the document object model, create code that uses objects, model some best practices, explain what is exception handling, and develop some real world examples using JavaScript. Our next live session is December 13th at 5:30 Eastern, and we will cover Unit 6. Thank you so much for coming. I hope this helped you some with our Unit 5, and I hope to see you next week.
And let me just say for everyone that was watching, thank you, Susan, for taking us through this, and thank you everyone for joining us. And as was just said, we'll be back next week for the final unit 6. And again, the links to all the previous videos can be found down in the description of this video, as well as a link to the full course, which you can take at Saylor.org. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.